Welcome.
Benvenuti, bienvenidos, hoş geldiniz.
Willkommen.
Hello from the two of us as well. So here we are, and we're going to talk about Frankenstein to you. And maybe to start with, we should say that the two of us have been involved in a number of projects already, but this has been our favorite thing, hasn't it, Debbie? And we've been busy for
Absolutely.
a number of months, if not to say years.
I think that's going too far. Anyway, welcome to all of you. I was quite amazed to see on the map that we've got a lot of participants tonight who aren't sitting in Niedersachsen, where Frankenstein is obviously an exam topic next year. So that I thought was quite amazing, and I'm really excited that so many of you are interested in what we've been concocting. Thank you, Rose. That is very kind. Okay, so what to expect tonight? We will basically, in 3 parts, talk to you about our Frankenstein product package. This is going to be very brief, okay? And then we are going to start filling this brain with the second, the really intense bit, what we're very excited about, and that is our teacher's guide. That is very, 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 very due to appear in a short period of time, and some of you I know have been waiting, and apologies for the wait. I think we'd all love to blame Corona, but I think we just have to say it's a series of unfortunate events that has caused the delay, and I hope you'll forgive us once you see what we've concocted.
I'm going to butt in here, and so the teacher's guide, that's not going to be brief, and Debbie was trying to be very diplomatic, but I don't actually mind coming out with that, because I mean, that's not just a pretense. I actually ended up in hospital last November, and this was not due to Corona, but there were just 2 months where I couldn't work. So there we are. This is what caused the delay. Over to part 3, Debbie.
Yes, part 3 we've reserved for you. We're hoping we'll have time, so we'll try not to make part 2 too long and too extensive for a question and answer session with you guys. But we will try to answer your questions if you type them into the chat as we go along. But before we start, I think what we'd like to do is a quick survey just to see what page we're all on, and what we'd like to find out from you before Brigitte actually starts the polls is who has read Frankenstein, and maybe recently. It doesn't matter when you've read it actually, but if you've read it recently, that'll help to follow what we're going to be talking about. Have you taught it? That is very interesting for us to know, obviously, and if yes, what was the difficulty for your learners on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is very difficult? If you haven't taught it yet, what is the anticipated difficulty? How difficult do you think it'll be for your learners to deal with Frankenstein? And then how much time did you or do you plan to devote to the novel in class? So Brigitte, here you go. Thank you very much. Yay, everybody's read it.
Okay, two-thirds have actually read the novel recently, but there's also a substantial number of people who haven't actually read the novel recently. You're going to be in for a surprise. It's great fun reading the novel. It's really still one of my favorites. And you're going to love it, and you're also going to find that a lot of the myths surrounding the monster and what have you, it's very different in the novel. Then I was really struck by the second question on timing, because our idea in the reader, I mean, there's material to cover many weeks, if not months, to pick and choose from, but sort of 5 to 6 weeks was roughly the time we had in mind as well, and this is sort of what we experimented on. And then, of course, there's the difficulty involved, the kind of final thing. Not too many people thought it was going to be a 10, a very, very difficult, but compared to other books students have had to read for school, this definitely belongs to the more difficult group, I think. And anything else you'd like to point out, Debbie? Anything that surprised you here?
No, not really. Thank you, Brigitte, for putting us back on the screen. I did type into the chat, I don't know if you all saw it there. For those of you who haven't read it, spoiler alert, we will mention things that might spoil the story for you. I hope it won't. Okay, so we'll briefly go into the product package. I'll be taking you through that mainly because I do want to keep it short. One note for you, some of the slides are in here basically because I want you to be able to access them later. You can, you will all get the PDF at the end of this seminar, and really I'm not going to go into all of the text, it's just for your reference. So if we jump over certain slides, that's because we've got other things to say at a different stage that we find are more important. Okay, so product package consists obviously of the reader, that's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Then we have the Lektüre Wortschatz, that's very small and thin little title. I'll say a few words on that in a bit. And the forthcoming teacher's guide. Just so you know, these three products are awaiting you. The reader, most of you know our readers, I assume, so you're familiar with the setup. I think what is special about this one, we have really taken time over the section on how to survive without a dictionary because the language is old. The sentence structure is awkward, and we wanted to give students a bit more help with reading. But we do feel that once you have got into reading, you can really groove into the language quite well, and we do feel that you can encourage your students that not to give up. There's a section about the author, fairly short. The annotated text, the words that the students should know in the annotations are marked by a little bullet, not by an asterisk, as here on the slide, but they are marked, you see that. And at the very end of the book, we do have an alphabetical list of the most frequently used words so that students can actually flip back there to look up words that show up and they don't understand. Okay, that's the reader. We'll quickly jump to the Lektüre Wortschatz, which is very useful, a useful resource for weaker learners. It has a lot of language support in it. It is also quite, in our experience, helpful for those laid students that sit in the back of your class and you really don't know, you know they're bright, you don't know how much are they picking up on what you're saying, or they contribute sensible stuff, but you really don't know where they're at. For them, this is a really quick revision of the topics and what is needed. The topics cover the main topics that the book covers: science and technology, religion and fate, the role of nature, characterizations, genre, influences, narrative styles. And just to give you an idea of the layout, we have mind maps, we have info boxes, we have drawn on those also in the teacher's guide because they are a very helpful resource for you. Collocations, word families, the usual vocab, very useful little booklet and fun to work with. And then we have ta-da-da-da, enter the teacher's guide. I am so really excited about this because it has taken years of our lives, but it is such a fun project to do. Before we dive in deep, you can see here we're still in section 1, the teacher's guide. The topics in Frankenstein and that we have covered in this teaching guide are in this wonderful bubble. Harald, do you want to pick your favorite?
Do I want to pick my favorite? Well, I think that the monster is probably my favorite because, like I pointed out beforehand, there are so many versions of that monster out there. Um, Uh, well, basically going back to the 1931 film that everybody has based their idea of the monster on, but once you're reading the book, it's very different and very surprising. So for me, this journey has also been a rediscovery of the monster in a way. And of course, there's Mary Shelley herself, who is amazing. I find that book, for a book that's been written over 200 years ago, it's incredibly fresh, and all the topics, they're going to appeal to students. There's so much in it, and it's this richness that Debbie has pointed out that wasn't really all that easy to deal with, because you can see there are sort of basically hundreds of topics. And not all of them are related. So in other words, we really, it took us some time to sort things out and to structure it. But we're going to show you in the teacher's guide that we've come up with something that's extremely structured, and is going to give you various options on how to proceed and work on this. So shall we move on to the next slide,
Yes.
Debbie, and sort of show people something that's actually inside?
Not quite, yes, absolutely. This is just an overview for you guys on the contents before we dig deeper. Our teacher's guides, I don't know how many of you actually know the new layout of our teacher's guides. We've been revamping them over the last year or so. So parts 1 and 2 are usually overlooked, but they are full of useful information for you. We'll be looking at that in a few seconds. Part 3 are the lesson plans. That's the meat. That's what we'll be spending a lot of time on later. For some of you, part 4 is the meat. That's the photocopiables that we have. Part 5 is, oh, I've skipped part 5. Yeah, because we don't have a part 5. Sorry, I got muddled up. The additional material that we have for you and your students. There is a sub-chapter 5 in the lesson plan, sorry. But the additional material that we have for you and your students that you can access, or your students can access with the Clet Augmented app and using web codes, that is also available, often overlooked, and it is a wealth of not just information, but it makes your life a lot easier. That is our aim, really, to make your life easier and fun when teaching this. The good news, or the interesting news for you to know, is that this teacher's guide, because we have such a bad conscience and we're so very late for the Niedersachsen colleagues, it will be available as a PDF.
Okay, and this is where I probably have to take over because Debbie seems to have disappeared. So she was talking about the teacher's guide being available as a download and then as a digitales Unterrichtspaket, which also means, of course, that in terms of Fernlernunterricht, this is going to help us tremendously. Now, let's see what happens if we move on to the next transparency here. It's not working if I click on it. Debbie is back and she can probably click on the next transparency to move on, or Brigitte can. Okay. Slight technical hiccups, but you're all used to this from your own lessons, so it's not a problem. I think everybody's really used to it by now, and nothing to worry about.
I can just answer your question.
Okay, I think you need to.
I can just answer Christina's question. When do we expect it?
Okay, you probably need to
be published. What do I need to do? Oop. You're flying through this.
Okay, it's zooming forward now in our presentation. I'm not pressing anything, but we have to go
Yeah,
back a couple of
I'm here.
slides, but
Okay.
it's okay. So when do you expect it to be published eventually? Okay, that's one for
I
you
will
to
answer that, and I'm really, really
promise people.
happy to answer that imminently. Basically, as soon as we go to print, we will have the PDF download available, so that is the cheaper option because you have to do the printing. I hate to promise something I can't keep, but we're talking a matter of 2 weeks for the download, maybe a bit sooner, and then 3 or 4 weeks for the print version. Possibly by the end of next week, if all goes very, very well. We're working on it. We're doing our damnedest to get it to you as soon as possible. The other option here, the Digitales.
So we're definitely talking before Easter.
Oh, yes, certainly before Easter.
Would you like to
certainly
say
before
it's
Easter.
going to be before Easter? So.
And the Digitales Unterrichtspaket, just a few notions, you can, words on that. This is a presentation software that we will be providing. The teacher's guide would be in this tool, along with the reader and along with a PDF of the Lektüre-Wortschatz for you to reference and to work with and to access links much faster. But there will be more on that once. That's going to take a little while longer. So watch this space for that. We're bound to do an update and another seminar on that. So. Our part one, we're now in section 2 of, or part 2 of this seminar, where we want to look at the teacher's guide in detail. Part 1 that I mentioned earlier is often overlooked. I'd like to bring 2 bits to your attention, and that is in this section, in this second subchapter of part 1, there is an overview that will help you for your scheduling and reading plan. And there is also part of our concept is that we have several places where there are optional student presentations, because we know student presentations are important. And we've given you there an overview of what student presentations can feature in your teaching sessions, and when you would need to brief the students and when they would be due. So that is really relevant and important information for you there. If you decide to go without the student presentations, don't worry. All the input that you need to fill any content gaps that would be filled by the student presentations is in the teacher's guide for you. A lot of this is the usual blah blah. We don't need to go into the detail here. The structure of the modules and an overview is given in part, the third subchapter of part 1, and also very important, just helpful notes on how to actually access the extra material, how to use the web codes, how does CLET Augmented work, how does Kahoot work. So all of that is included in this part 1, sort of a technical information, a few notes on the photocopiables, abbreviations, bibliography, that kind of stuff. Similarly, part 2 usually is about the novel, background info about the novel, and here I'd like to draw your attention to the chapter by chapter summaries, because especially if you don't have a lot of time to read and treat the novel in your classes, or if your students are lagging behind in their reading, the chapter by chapter summaries are a very, very good way to bring everybody onto the same page. You could just spend a couple of minutes reading those out or handing them out to your students, and then at least they know the basics of what is going on. Then similarly, in the section on the characters, we have short characterizations, character descriptions, and these serve as model answers because, of course, we will be asking students to write a characterization. You'd be stupid not to with Frankenstein. They are so fun, these characters, aren't they, Harald?
Okay.
Briefly,
if you want to call
well,
them fun.
They're just interesting. It's very interesting. There's the whole subsection 3 is useful background information for you. Again, this will fill gaps if you decide not to have student presentations that will be relevant just to understand the novel, to understand where Mary Shelley is coming from, and to understand the whole context in which the story was written, to understand what's going on. And then some info on the genre and the narrative technique. And now we come to the meat, the lesson plan.
Well,
I think we can call it that.
It's not that it's just been the well, yeah, but it hasn't just been the bare bones what you've been pointing at so far, Debbie. So come on. Okay, basically what we've done, I talked about sort of the structuring process, and we actually met up last summer and we sat down together to sort of structure all of this, and we ended up dividing it into these 5 modules. We're now going to sort of point out what these modules are, what they contain, and then we're going to go into some more detail to show you what is actually there, and you're also going to see some examples. So the first module, the idea was that students need some background information about Mary Shelley's world, and this is also where the students' presentations come in, but we've got a kind of Lernzirkel, if you want, about a number of topics that they need to be familiar with in order to understand the novel as such. Then
I'll click for you.
to click on, because I think if we're both, you can click for me, thank you, because otherwise we're going to fast forward through the presentation. So the second module is based on Victor Frankenstein, the idea of what kind of a character is he. That's also obviously to do with the way in which the story is told or written, and it's about well, what makes him tick, what drives him, and this obviously lies at the center of what you need for the Abitur in Niedersachsen as well, the idea of the ethics of science. How does Victor Frankenstein actually see the world, and how is the book still relevant today? Because it raises a number of ethical issues that obviously we still haven't quite reached a conclusion about in our day and time. So something that's worth discussing some more.
This is just to give you an idea of the part of the contents page that covers modules 1 and 2.
And let me just add to module 2 that also goes with the idea of belonging and also loneliness, perhaps the loneliness of Victor Frankenstein, or his solitude, and that brings us to module 3, somebody who is even more tormented, who's even more lonely, who's very much on his own, and feels that there is no way for him to actually have any sense of belonging unless he could be given a mate, which his creator, Victor, well, first says he will provide and then doesn't. So that's already been a spoiler, I suppose, for those of you who haven't read it. Should have given a spoiler alert beforehand. But anyway, the idea is really in both of these modules, module 2 and 3, we learn about these central characters and elements, and about their identity, their quests, if you want, but also their hopes and ambitions. And of course, with the monster, we also raise the question of how human is the monster actually, and in the portrayal of both Victor and the monster, we also need to look at how Mary Shelley actually does this. How does she play with our emotions to a certain extent? How can you actually sympathize with some well, with a mass murderer. It's very, very cleverly done as a reader, you move through the pages. I just love it.
There you do. I'll continue with Module 4. We said earlier there are so many topics in Frankenstein. We didn't really want to limit ourselves to just the 3 that Niedersachsen at the moment is focusing on, because we do realize that you might want to look at some other topics too. And so Module 4 will have cover topics such as the gender issues that arise. How can Mary Shelley, who is really with her feminist mother, even though she didn't know her, but she idolized her, and she was so forward, so much advanced in her times. Why did she write such classical female characters? And how can we lift those female characters off the page? We also have a section in there on crime and prejudice, and help me out, Harald, I've forgotten the second. Oh, nature versus nurture.
Nature, yeah.
Are you innately bad? Are you born bad? Are you born good? What makes us tick and behave the way we do? That's another very interesting section in Module 4. This we will provide online, and I'll be honest with you, this is to buy us time. And then one of my favorites is the last module, the Leistungsmessung, which we'll talk about a bit more as we go along. So, another overview of the contents page. And if we look at the lesson plans, just for those of you who don't know the new layout, we have a clear structure, and we use the margins so that you can have a quick overview, and we've added lots of suggestions for you because we're all in this very special situation at the moment. We've added suggestions to help you adapt to distant learning scenarios by using different polls, making use of Padlet, using breakout rooms, screen sharing, and so on and so forth. So if you're not in the classroom situation, we're giving you ideas on how you can adapt the material to use in a distance teaching scenario. There's lots of suggestions in the margins, also where to dig deeper, where to go. It points you to the variety of media, the task types, and the student interactions, and all of this would look like this in the margin. And you can see there's a sort of step-by-step sequencing through the lesson. You decide how much time you spend on each step, but the layout should help you find your way around each double lesson quite quickly. Okay,
and
now
solutions too, which Debbie didn't mention.
Oh yes, the solutions to all the tasks, of course, or model solutions, we should say, because your students might come up with completely different ideas and have very, very valid arguments for them, and that should be appreciated, I think.
So.
Now, this is one of the pages I mentioned earlier that is for your reference, really. Module 1 has 3 double lessons. It's all about the social context, Mary's day and age. Here's your overview of the photocopiables that match this. And I'd just like to point out, you can see the subchapter of each module 1.1, and the matching photocopiables have 3 digits. So 111 fits into module 1.1, just to help you when you actually hold the thing in your hand, the final product. And the colors here, each module has its own color, so module 1 is green. And now the highlights that are in module 1.
As we go through the as we go through the whole stuff, we're going to sort of show you our personal highlights, but sometimes we've actually managed for once to settle on a highlight that we both share. For module 1, the highlight, well, one of the highlights, they're all highlights really, but this is the highlight of the highlights, is the bookmark to help your students with the reading progress. You can actually, it's a photocopy, you can actually print it out and then cut it out. The students can use it and fold it and put it in there. This is what it looks like. They can put it in their book, and they can check on their reading progress. It also helps them to see the structure, the actual structure of the novel. You see the different colors here, and you see the kind of, at the first couple of pages, the letters that start the frame of the story, and then you moving down the line and have different narrators, and you have a list of the narrators here with some background information and also some central questions associated with, or central questions that are important for the students and that they might like to answer as they are reading along here. So the idea of the bookmark is one to help students along, and now we've already okay. I don't know why it does this. It keeps
I'll go
jumping
back
forward.
I'll jump back.
You have to go back.
I was just replying to Jana, who quite rightly pointed out that our color coding got mixed up. So I'm sorry about that. We will remedy that, Jana, and put the right version online. It's the bookmark is online for you, and we will remedy that, and then you'll have the correct version.
Yeah, of course, it's Victor and the monster. That's very observant of you. Thank you very much.
And we rely on this kind of feedback, so do get back to us when you find things like that.
Okay, apart from the bookmark, there's the Lernzirkel I already talked about, and there are the optional student presentations. You don't have to do them, but anyway, you have enough material to answer all of these questions that might be raised by the Lernzirkel, and then I keep my hands away from the
I'd like to mention something.
Continue clicking.
Yeah, I will click on in a second. I'd like to mention something about the student presentations, because the whole idea with the social context for us is that we felt we'd like to give the students the chance to choose what they find most interesting or fascinating about the social context and do a presentation on that. So it's a bit difficult to anticipate what they might choose to do, and if you don't want to be too experimental, you might want to guide them into what kind of presentation you would want them to do. But I do think that's a great option of giving students the chance to research something that they are naturally interested in, because that, I think, would make the presentation better. Then, of course, there's another highlight that is a Kahoot we've added. The alternative is you could do it pub quiz style. The questions that are on Kahoot are also on a photocopiable, so you could just start with the just to get an idea of what do your students know already, and just see how many misconceptions about the story they might have. We'll hop into Module 2, which, if you remember from earlier, is all about Victor. And when we say here Frankenstein, that is always Victor, obviously. It's his creation, it's his obsession, it's his isolation. Harald mentioned that. There's a list of photocopiables for you to just to see what is happening here. And some of the highlights for us, I think, must be the listening comprehension activities. Brigitte will give us a sample of this. Before I turn my microphone off, so you don't hear the sound twice through my microphone, just a quick word. We have a extensive use of a science podcast that talks about Frankenstein. We've made extensive use of it, and just to let you know what that sounds like, we'll play you a few snippets here.
One thing that's so important in the community of scientists during this period is what they called sociability. The importance of community and building community and sustaining networks of communication and meeting with people and being friendly and being the type of person who people wanted to be with. Victor Frankenstein falls into this singular pursuit of knowledge where sociability just disappears from his life and is unnecessary. And in many ways, and I think Mary Shelley presents this pretty well, he becomes marginalized from the society in which he lives.
Victor Frankenstein rejected any kind of community, and this contributed to his downfall.
I think we should leave it at that for the moment. Just to give you an idea, this is a panel discussion of several people that discuss various aspects of the novel, and we felt it was very authentic and very useful for the students to have access to this kind of material. So that is available for you to use. Another highlight is, for me at least, the reading journal. The reading journal is pocket size. There you can see it now. We have given the students the task to read the monster's tale, that is the 5 or 6 chapters pretty much in the middle of the novel, and to keep notes on the monster while they read, to assess his sense of belonging, his sense of identity. And this reading journal comes with 2 photocopiables. The students cut it out and fold it together and then just put the 2 pages into a little booklet shape. They can draw a face of the monster or glue a picture of the monster on the front and basically personalize it, but that will be a resource for them and a help while they're reading. And Harald, over to you, one of your highlights.
Probably I'm going to add to the reading journal, sort of as a teacher, I know one always shrinks back from the word reading journal because it always sounds like loads and loads of stuff to do and read and organize. And at the beginning, we really were thinking about, because both Debbie and myself, we're great fans of reading journals, and we've done an extensive one for Crooked Letter, and we thought it's just too much of a good thing. So to just do this for the Monster's Tale is certainly worth the students' while, and they will be familiar with the story by then. Yeah, one of my highlights definitely is to come to a, well, let's call it a modern version of the Frankenstein myth, if you want. In Ian McEwan's novel Machines Like Me, there are a number of parallel scenes which we've made use of. We've actually used that twice. We have a text in the teacher's guide, a text to work on in the classroom, but when we come to Leistungsmessung, we can show you, you're going to see that there's also another text or episode that's very reminiscent of what happens in the novel. So it's actually the idea of creation. How does Victor Frankenstein creates his monster? And here in this excerpt from the novel, which, well, if you haven't read the novel, do so. It's really worth your while. It's a great book, another great book by Ian McEwan, and here it's about Charlie, the protagonist of the novel, awakening, if you want, his robot Adam that he bought, his humanoid. Adam looks like a man, behaves like a man, falls in love like a man, and this is what causes the conflict. Yeah, it's a great story. Okay.
And fits in nicely with the whole focus of ethics in science and scientific development and where are we going from here. So just a modern aspect, as Harald said, of the same old. I'll jump and rush through. An eye on the time shows me if we want to have a question and answer session, I need to speed this up a bit. Module 3, we're assessing the legacy and the myth, and we're looking a lot at the monster here too, and his loneliness, his true nature, and how he's been presented in popular culture. So we have film reviews. Obviously, Boris Karloff is the actor who has given the monster a face, but Frankenstein Pop-Tarts are also quite popular.
And yummy.
Highlights, I think.
And yummy, but nevertheless.
Pardon? And yummy.
Okay. Yeah, and the highlight, we're coming to the Monster Jeopardy game. So we've actually created a game which you can use either to sort of wrap up the novel or to reactivate students' knowledge just before the Abitur. Okay, you can see a map here. This is what they're trying to run away from each other. All the rules of the game are there, and it's available in paper, but it's also available online, so you can play it on the whiteboard or what have you. So this is what it looks like, and are we gonna test one
this
of
is
the
an
questions?
interactive. Yes, this is an interactive browser-based session with different categories. Your students would call out a number. You would jump to the category and jump to the number. I'll read out because you can't read them on this tiny screenshot. The categories are vocabulary, quotes, characters, ethics, multiple choice, mind the gap, content, between the lines, and social context. And there's, in each category, there's 6 questions. You click on a number, you'll jump to the question, and underneath the question, you will find a little field answer. You click on that, you get the answer, and your students, that can be used as a revision or fun section. We actually wanted to play it with you here, but unfortunately the links, the interaction doesn't work in this presentation tool, so we're really quite disappointed. But as I said earlier, time is sort of jumping ahead of us.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. The game does contain jokers too, so enter nature always means, oh, there might be a storm, you're delayed, so the kids have to stay on their spot, or a nice breeze is moving you forward, so jump ahead by 2 parts. And the idea would be that you have 2 groups playing against each other, trying, one is the monster, one is Victor, and they're chasing each other across Europe, basically. And then in Module 4, as I said earlier, this is digging deeper, more ideas, gender issues, nature, nurture, prejudice and racism, and just for you to have an overview of that, this is online. It will be available online using the web code that's in the teacher's guide. Jumping to the last module in the lesson plans is the exam module, which is modular. I really like that. We've got listening comp, we've got translation, we've got writing, we've got speaking for you, and you can see here quite a significant a number of photocopiables too. And for me, the highlight really is that it's modular. You can pick and mix for your group's needs. If you want to combine a listening with a translation, you can do that. If you want them to do writing and translation, do that. If you want to give them speaking practice, do that. It's up to you to combine these bits and bobs. Also, incredibly suitable if you don't want to use them as exam practice. This is where you can go deeper into any one topic. The answers are there, the question sets are there. You can work with this material as and when, obviously, is best suited to you and your group. And
obviously,
I particularly like...
Sorry to butt in here, Debbie, but this is the kind of stuff that you all know out there. This is the stuff that takes you forever and ever, especially the listening comprehension, the questions, the multiple choice questions, and it's really good to have loads of native speakers there to help you with this kind of stuff. So it's all there at your fingertips, and you don't have to spend too many hours devising that. And then Debbie was just about to say, because before I so rudely interrupted her, it loops back and interlinks with all the previous modules. This is just one example for the Kommunikationsprüfung here, for an individual exam where we're using different quotes, but where we're also using caricatures or a caricature here. It's too small for you to actually see what's going on here. You see the monster standing here in a shop, and he's trying to pick a card for Father's Day. The monster pauses in his rampage to send Dr. Frankenstein a greeting card. Now, you might think that's funny, or you might not think that's funny, but anyway, it links back to this idea of loneliness and rejection, of course. Why does Victor Frankenstein reject his own creation, and how painful is that to the monster, and so on and so forth. We also have different input for these oral exams, old movie posters for the tandem exam here, where you can have candidate A and B comparing their posters, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Cindy, you had a question about Frankenstein or Frankenstein-related movies. No, we skipped that to the extent that we have references to the older film versions, but we did not have the scope within the topic set for Niedersachsen and the ones that we find most important to also add the film, as you will see in a minute, or 2 seconds when I talk about the photocopiables. We have such a wealth of text input. Short films, yes, but not movies. Hope that answers your question. Just part 4, I said we'd mention the photocopiables. There's an incredible variety on the photocopiables, not just in terms of activities, but in terms of text types in the broadest linguistic sense of text. We have reports, we have newspaper articles, academic publications, biblical texts, film posters, short videos, paintings, audio recordings, the Ethics podcast, sound bites, film reviews, what have you. This is an incredible resource. The more I look at it, the more excited I get. The amount of photocopiables, there's 33, amounting to just over 40 pages, because some are several pages, and this is not counting the online materials. A brief note on photocopiables and how to use or distribute them, because it has come to my attention that some of you are unsure of what you're allowed to do with photocopiables. It's obviously you can copy them and distribute them in class, but what about digital distribution? And the fact is, if you've bought a teacher's guide to use with your class, you are indeed allowed to scan a photocopiable and to distribute it digitally to your class in an LMS system like Moodle. You are allowed to upload that. So just to put minds at rest there, you are not doing anything illegal by doing that. And then a lot of the photocopiables are enhanced with the CLET augmented app. So there is extra material, extra further input, digging deeper behind that. Anything that is added using CLET augmented is also accessible through the online code on the website. And also there's, as we mentioned earlier, additional material online for you to use. I'm sorry it has been a rush, but that's because there is so much there.